Hello and welcome to another episode of A Bit of Light Relief. So this is, I'm Jeanette Ramsden. I nearly forgot my name then. That's not a good start.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm the CEO of the Curve Group, and it's one of my lifelong commitments to help HR community in their everyday working lives. And this is our podcast to bring insight and thought-provoking ideas to you all about what's going on in the current market. And we've got a little bit of change today.
We have exciting change.
And we've got Ken Brotherston from TALiNT.
Hello.
Gorgeous Ken, who has really helped the Curve Group over many years now. But before we introduce
Can't get
Ken,
rid of us,
just in case I end up taking over, better introduce yourself, Kelly.
Yeah, so I'm Kelly York. I'm the Chief Operations Officer at the Curve Group.
Yeah, brilliant. So Ken,
Yes.
at the risk of sounding like Cilla Black, tell us who you are and where you come from.
Thank you, Silly. So hello, I'm Ken Brotherston. I'm the founder and chair of TALiNT Partners. So shall I tell them who TALiNT Partners are?
Yeah.
So TALiNT Partners is an amazing business.
He's learned about the plug already.
Just so that you know, the gratuitous plug is the dinger whenever we make a gratuitous plug, so apologies.
And we work across what we call the talent ecosystem. So really, everyone who is involved in helping employers find and keep the people they need. Mm-hmm. So our communities are employers themselves, and that's a global group of employers, and then a wide range of vendors, essentially people who sell into employers, and they're typically large staffing firms, outsourcing businesses like the fantastic Curve Group, and then a whole range.
Thank you for the plug on our behalf.
And then a range of technology providers, everything from relatively small scale-up businesses to some of the largest HR tech companies out there, and really everyone who is kind of interconnected in helping employers find and keep the people they need.
Yeah.
And a wonderful job you do as well, so I think it's worth mentioning.
Ken managed to get a Yorkshire person to invest in a difficult market in another professional services firm, so we cannot recommend it enough, really, or else we wouldn't have him on the sofa, quite frankly. So there we go. But Ken, tell us a little bit about your background and what's led you to who you are today.
I mean, my background is many years. Slightly scarily, this is my 5th decade in the world of human capital. Wow. Well, I started in the 80s, the 90s, the noughties, the 10s, and now the 20s. So I've been, in this market for a long time, really working right across all aspects of human capital, from recruitment and staffing, outsourcing. I was HR director for a few years for a big US investment business, and then for the last 10 years or so, I've been. I was chairman of a recruitment technology business, and then for the last 10 years, I've been CEO and now chair of TALiNT Partners.
Perfect, thank you.
Like
Shall I introduce what we're here to talk about today?
Let's have a bit of role reversal. I like it.
Taking over today. Taking over. So we've invited Ken to talk about actually how artificial intelligence introduction is going to change the shape of the workforce, and I think it's a pertinent question. I think for everyone at the moment.
For every minute.
I think it's certainly something we get asked about on a daily basis, and I think none of us really completely know what shape that's going to look like, other than that workforce and skills are going to change. I did my traditional stat reviews, which can only kind of comment. There is a lot of conflicting information out there at the moment, but some are saying kind of 5% of roles are likely to be gone. Others are saying 80 odd million within the world, which is about 1%. We've also got other stats that are saying 60% of roles will evolve. Now, that's a hard task for any business to consider. And that then overlaid with the fact that there is a drive to reduce cost via people reduction is also one of the big things. So I think, Ken, I'll hand over to you, because I know this is passionate for you, isn't it? It's one of the things you think about all the time.
It really is. It really is. And, if I might say another gratuitous plug, TALiNT Partners is really good. We're really good at identifying a lot of these trends. So I wrote a blog in 2019 after the election saying that no political party was talking about the elephant in the room, which was how AI and robotics were impacting the world of work. And in the 18 months before the 2019 election, we'd lost something like 300,000 high street jobs. That was mainly automation rather than AI. But and your stats are right. There are mixed messages, but the direction of travel is crystal
is all
clear.
agreed.
Yeah,
right.
crystal
We
clear.
just don't know the depths of that as it stands at the moment.
And I have to say, having been around for a while, I've never seen the scale and speed of change that we're seeing now. I mean, it really is like nothing any of us have ever seen. And it's kind of exciting and terrifying in equal measure. I think there are some amazing opportunities there. But the thing that I think we need to prepare for is this dislocation impact. Whether it's 1% of jobs, 2% of jobs, when you actually take the number of people that impacts, that's a big number. Even if it's only 1 or 2%. And I think that dislocation that we're seeing now is something that it kind of worries me, because I don't hear any government really talking about
They're not.
the
They're
impact
definitely
of
not.
this. Yeah.
They're really not.
And I think they need to.
I think CEOs are.
Yeah.
Because they're sort of challenging their HR departments on saying, how can we reduce our workforce?
I think that's the big thing, that historically you had economic cycles, right? And we're now in an economy that's driven by events, not cycles. So you go back to Brexit, Trump won. Obviously the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, Trump too, and the tariffs.
It's literally endless in the last 5 years, isn't it?
It's events rather than a cycle. So the idea that we'll come back up again, and I just don't see any evidence for that being automatically something that's going to happen. So I think you've got that, and I think the other thing that we've got now, to your point, Jeanette, which is really profound, is the link between increased corporate profitability and employment growth is broken. Historically, you would see jobs being hired as an indication of confidence, and then sort of profits starting to follow quite quickly. I don't think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see corporate profits, once the economy sort of stabilises a bit, starting to improve, but I don't think you'll see that reflected in vacancy numbers and unemployment.
And I think my concern also is for the mid-tier market, specifically where we spend a lot of time and efforts, really, because actually the investment into automation, AI, robotics is a significant outlay initially, and actually that's then given the larger corporates even more kind of headway to the medium-sized businesses, because they can afford to start implementing and spending money. But actually long term, that leaves them behind in the race of action delivery as well. And that concerns me from a market proposition, because is it then kind of eliminating this mid-tier market that people are really driving really hard, and have some brilliant services and products as well. So that's another worry for me.
So that's a really good point. And this is, again, I think, where there's an opportunity, because what we see with all the amazing and fantastic insight that we get.
And it is good insight.
Would that be TALiNT Partners?
We talk to a lot of the world's largest organisations, and you're right, they're running they're building their own large language models. They're investing literally millions and millions into new technology. But much as they've got their foot on the accelerator to do this, they've also got their hand on the handbrake, because they're terrified of legislation and compliance.
Which is a big problem at the moment.
It really is a big problem. For example, around having AI being used to assess candidates and make decisions.
Absolutely.
So they're terrified about it, and it's slowing them down. And I think that's...
I think they should be worried about it, by the way. Just saying, I think sort of a robot making a decision on somebody's future is quite significant. But, hey, who am I?
Well, I mean, it's a really interesting debate, but for now, because large organisations, particularly multinational organisations, are really nervous about this. So they're really not being as nimble and as innovative as perhaps they could be. And I think this is an opportunity for medium-sized businesses.
It's a push.
Because the other thing that I think is becoming really clear quite quickly is it doesn't have to cost an awful lot to do some of this stuff. And if you look at the rise of AI agents and how you can deploy them, that doesn't have to be anyone can do that now. I mean, we're doing it in our business.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating, that whole kind of intellectual exercise of how you, determine what you want the agent to do and how you get it to do it. But that doesn't have to be solely the kind of environment for big companies to do that, medium-sized and very small businesses can do it.
I think the disadvantage, though, is you buy a product in a smaller business. It's how you knit those multiple products together, and that is the problem, because that's the development, that's the recoding, and that is, I think, where the challenge is at the moment. So some brilliant products in AI, but for the right reasons, I feel still. Yeah. How do you think it's going to impact kind of HR and recruitment teams in the future? Because I think that is the big pivotal question that everyone wants to know as well.
And it's now. I mean, you see it now. You see it particularly with talent acquisition functions, where a lot of their routine aspects of their jobs are almost completely automated. Think of things like sourcing and scheduling and stuff like that. So it's an opportunity to really get much more strategic, and we're really talking now about talent and HR functions kind of being completely reinvented, and we're talking about workforce rather than talent acquisition, because one of the things that I think is happening quite quickly is organisations are saying we're going to hire for skills, and that's fine. But then what they're doing is they're taking a job, they're looking at the skills that make up that job, and then they're saying, okay, which of these skills need to be human, need to be augmented human, or need to be automated? And this is your point about the 60 or 70% of jobs being affected. So the jobs won't disappear, but they'll have large parts of them carved out. Which can then be automated.
And leadership and instruction and being able to translate technology to business becomes more important as skills, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas your more basic operational level tasks are then eliminated.
There could be robotics or AI.
Exactly.
And that's that's happening at speed now. That's the bit that is really moving very very quickly.
And without wishing to have too much of a gratuitous plug, but if you are an HR person that doesn't have the capacity to do this thinking, to do exactly what you said, Ken, because that was brilliantly put, by the way, the Curve Group can actually help with this stuff, because as Kelly was sort of saying, how on earth can you do the investment that you need, not only to buy the technology, but then to get that developed and integrated, not only just in the HR departments, but also across the whole organisation, so that you're really, as an HR leader, in doing exactly that leading in this new skills and technology planning. And it is technology, it isn't AI for me, as Kelly quite often reminds me actually on a regular basis that I'm a bit of a Luddite. But the reality is it's about the whole technology stack, how that is implemented across the whole of organisation, and that how that impacts on your people. I think you had a very good point at one of the dinners that I attended about the skill set in a contact centre. That whilst I don't really want to tell you, you'd be much better at telling the story than I am.
Yeah, but it's a really good example of unintended consequences that we've heard a lot of organisations talk about. They say, well, let's automate a task, and the call centre one was a great one, where we take away all the kind of routine calls and leave our people to really focus on the interesting and complex work. And for interesting and complex, that translated into stressful.
Yes.
And so their attrition really increased very significantly, because all their contact call centre people had were just complex call after. They never got a breather. They never got a chance to just kind of
do that job, like the
decompress
basic job.
And have a nice interaction rather than
and finding that balance, I think, again, to your point about HR leaders, that's a hugely important part of what they need to do, is get that balance right. Because if you go too far, you're going to actually, it's like a bell curve. There needs to be enough stimulation and interest to kind of optimize your workforce engagement. But if there's too much, then you're going to find that optimization decreases quite quickly.
And what's also interesting for me is that what a lot of technology and AI has done is actually increase the amount of applications that you're getting. But the reality is getting the right applications is actually tremendously difficult, and they're not switching off, particularly for B2C organisations. But B2Bs do need to protect their EVP, and if that massive increase in all those volumes that HR's department are starting to that's about to generate, if you can't deal with that in an appropriate way, it really does switch people off in the future and for now, and it just can be extremely damaging. So,
and I am still, and I've said this many times, a firm believer there is a need for human intervention within a recruitment process, and I think we'll actually go too far in AI with recruitment and come back a little bit, because my strong feeling is people do want to speak to people about the biggest decision they're going to make about their career. So and I think that's key.
Anybody's lifetime.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and you see this in lots of different ways. You see it with universities in the early 80s. I think 5% of people went to university, and then it got up to kind of 55%, and now it's starting to kind of go back a bit, and I think it will find its kind of equilibrium. And I think the same is true with kind of AI and technology. People will run into it, they'll overuse it, and then they'll realise actually
they'll start losing good people because of what their experience has been. And actually, again, this is where the mid-tier market have the opportunity to excel within that real personal touch and focus. Because they won't get the volume of applications without the brand in the same way. So it's about nurturing those as well. So I think that's key. So what's your top tips?
I mean, the top tip is, and
say that really carefully, won't you?
Jeanette's point is a really good one, because the day job doesn't change. The day job is still full on and highly pressurized, but you've got to run into this head first and really understand what it means for your organization. It's just not an option. Because if you don't, someone else in your organization absolutely will be doing that. And this idea of being able to engage with the CEO and the C-suite and help them understand how to build the workforce of the future, regardless of the size of your organisation. I think that's where the opportunity is. But you can't put that off. I mean, it really is one of your most urgent tasks. And this is where, amazing firms like the Curvy Group can help you just do some of the thinking around it. But what they can't do, though, is design your own strategy and policy. That's your job. But what they can do is obviously help. And as can we, because we're also really good at that too, helping you find the right reference points and other people who may have had the same issue.
I'm poised. Would that be the TALiNT Partners? Yes. Ken, thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully our HR community has found that totally valuable. I know I have, and I've got some brilliant insights over the years, not just on the sofa with you, Ken. And that sounded a bit wrong, didn't it? But anyway, there we go. Let's go with it. I thank you all for joining us today. If there are any topics that you would like us to discuss on the sofa, or get any of our brilliant expertise in from elsewhere, please do contact us directly. And thank you for listening.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Bye.